Scott Horton from Troocoo. Good morning. How are you?
Morning, Pete. How you going?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. We're obviously down here in Victoria, and we're slowly creeping out of the horrible lockdown that we've been in. But you guys have been all right up there, haven't you? I'm not suggesting you've had it easy by any stretch, but you've had it. No, it hasn't been too bad.
Oh no, I think compared to you guys down south, we've fared a lot better. I've been watching really carefully how you guys have been going in Melbourne, and we've got family down there, so it's just great to see you guys out now and back to normality. I'm sure Melbourne Cup came at a good time. I'm sure the pubs and bars were
honestly, right. You should have seen it. Honestly, the sun came out. We haven't had sun like that for a long time, and today it's pouring down as Melbourne does. But on Melbourne Cup Day, the clouds parted, the sun came out, and the parks were just full. I mean, I don't know if there was many people going to the pub or going to the mates or whatever, but just the parks were full, and it was just a nice celebratory day. It was lovely.
That's great. No, it's great news. It's good to see you're back out there as well. I'm sure it'll be good for business, which is great.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you so much for being involved. This is Recruitment Journeys, the podcast series. I will very quickly explain what it is, in case there's anybody listening for the first time. Recruitment Journeys, as it says on the tin, it's conversations with selected recruitment identities from predominantly the Australian recruitment industry, in which we talk about your journey, your personal career journey, in the hope to inspire, educate, motivate somebody who might be listening, and there's something that you say might resonate and it might inspire them to go and do this or this. It's just a good old candid conversation about the journey that you've been through on your career. And you've been kind enough to come on today and talk about a couple of paths that you've taken. And I, for the purpose of the conversation, I kind of categorize everybody, put you in a box, if you will, Scott. I hope you don't mind. And for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to call you the recruiter who successfully started not one, but two recruitment businesses. And that will become apparent why when we get into the discussion. So that's what it's all about. I've already given you a bit of an introduction already earlier on in the podcast, but in your own words, Scott, would you mind telling the listeners and the viewers who you are?
Yeah, so thanks, Pete, and thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's good to chat with you. I'm the Managing Director of Troocoo. We're a Brisbane-based executive search and recruitment agency. So we basically specialise in three distinct areas: executive search, recruitment and contracting, and that's the way we've structured the business. And within the recruitment division specifically, we have some really distinct divisions. In terms of myself personally, I've got the big 5-0 next year, so I'm coming to the end of my career, not at the start of it.
You're wearing it well, Scott. You're wearing it well.
That's the benefit of being ginger. That's probably the only benefit. There you go. But yeah, I'm married. I've got 4 kids. I've got 2 dogs, and life is fairly hectic with running Troocoo as well. So, but no, it's great.
That sounds like a pretty busy life.
It is.
You should have more wrinkles than you actually do. But we'll talk about moisturizer after the podcast.
Exactly.
Right. Well, mate, look, I start all my podcasts in the same way, which is a classic question. And I usually get the same answer, to be honest with you. So we'll see what you say. And that question is, how and why did you break into the wonderful world of recruitment?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be pretty similar to most people that you talk with. But no, I came to Australia back in 2006. And prior to coming to Australia, I hadn't worked in the recruitment or search industry. I'd worked for the likes of Xerox, Vodafone, Dun & Bradstreet, so some of those big global brands in various sales roles. When I arrived in Australia in 2006, and this was pre-kids, I went to see Hudson, who obviously a big global recruitment business at the time, and I actually went to see them about a role that they'd advertised. And in those discussions, they then started talking to me about whether I'd considered working in recruitment. One of my best friends back in Manchester had run his own recruitment agency, and it was something I'd considered, but probably this was an ideal opportunity, I guess, being in Australia, and an ideal opportunity to take them up on that. So yeah, started in recruitment back in 2006 at Hudson in Brisbane, came in as a consultant working in their technology division, which was, really interesting at the time. And no, it was great. And I've not looked back since.
And tell me, did they sell you the dream? Did they say, "Oh, Scott, you learn $200,000 in your first year. You'll be driving a Porsche, blah blah blah"? Or was it a bit more sensible than that?
I think they were realistic. I think they said it was going to be hard work. They said it was going to be a big adjustment, which it was. But the guy I reported to at the time was a guy called Kevin Alexander. He's a great guy. If anyone knows Kev, he's really realistic. Great. Support to me in the early years of my career. Dean Davidson is still there at Hudson. He's a great guy. Obviously they've just gone through that acquisition in Australia and Asia Pacific. So it's great to see Dean and the guys there being so successful. But no, they're a great business, really supportive. But I think, they were very realistic as well in terms of how hard it would be making that transition. And it was not easy.
So how long were you with Hudson in total?
3 years, so just over 3 years. So I went through the GFC with them as well. So that hit in 2008. So I had 2 years where it was significant growth, and then the GFC hit in 2008, which was challenging.
So in 3 years, so you climbed to the position of director relatively quickly. 3 years. That strikes me as quite a fast ascension to the position of director.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Kevin and Dean asked me to take on one of their teams, and they said it's actually the worst performing team in the country. Would you take it on? And to be honest with you, I mean, there was nothing to lose really, was there? It couldn't get any worse. So I think we had a lot of success. We turned that round. We had a lot of success, and I think that took me on a journey where it went from one team to 5 teams, and hence the move into the director role. But a big business like Hudson, there's plenty of opportunity, and certainly that was the opportunity that was given to me, which was great.
Okay, all right. So 3 years into recruitment, which is a relatively short period of time to achieve such a rapid promotion, but more importantly to start thinking about doing your own thing. I mean, look, the wonderful thing about our industry, the wonderful thing about recruitment is, to the budding entrepreneurs out there, all you need is, a phone, laptop, bit of a network, bit of market knowledge, some get up and go, and you're off. You don't need premises, you don't need stock, you don't need a huge marketing budget, you don't need staff. You can just press the button and enter the world. But and that's what most people do. But what was your rationale around starting your own business? Why did it occur to you that this was something that you wanted to do? And I refer, of course, to the first recruitment agency that you were involved in, which was You and You.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it's an obvious question, I guess, in terms of why go out and do your own thing. I think for me, growing up, obviously I'm from England originally. My mum had run her own business, and I'd been exposed to that while I was growing up, and I saw how liberating that was for her and the freedom that it gave her. She did it for a different reason. She was raising 2 kids, and I guess, it was more of a lifestyle business. I think, my original business partner and I had a clear view of what we wanted to achieve. If I look back to that time, we'd just come out of the GFC. The market was just starting to recover. And I think we saw an opportunity in the local market. At the time, Davidsons were the number 1 privately owned business. And we looked at that business and said, well, they've been going since 1991. There was nobody really challenging them, and they were dominating. And we said, well, we think we can, challenge them, which is quite, when I look back now, that was quite an ambitious goal. But I would say that, if you look back at where we came from 10 years ago and where You and You are now, I'd say absolutely they've given Davidson's a red hot go, which is good to see. And listen, I know Bruce Davidson is a great guy and runs a very successful business, but it's I think he'd admit as well that You and You have been a bit of a pain in his growth plan locally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with healthy competition, right?
Exactly.
So that was the modus operandi to try and topple Davidson off the top spot. But I suppose my question is also, internally as a person, what drove you to to have that desire to start your own business? So you'd seen your mum do it, but was this kind of an inner drive that came from somewhere else?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'd been through, when I was 29, I went through I guess a serious health scare. I was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, it spread to my stomach, and I ended up going through an operation and chemotherapy. So I think, fast forward then, another 5-6 years later, I guess my philosophy was, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think people are naturally driven by success and failure. So my mindset was, well, what's the absolute worst thing that can happen? We're going to put money into this new venture and it's going to fail. Okay, I'll go back and get another job. Yeah. But I think, I'm highly competitive. I want to win at everything I do. And I think, so that inner drive and that fear of failure combined meant that we were probably never going to fail. But it really drove me to make sure that we were highly successful. So we, to your point, I think some people just go out there and start and they'll, get a laptop and, work from home. We never wanted to do that. We invested a lot of money straight away to get a really great brand, to get really good office space, to make sure that we could attract the right people and really get the business off the ground. So we invested heavily from the outset, which gave us that capital injection to really, grow and scale the business.
Okay. All right. So, it did go well. That enterprise did go well, and you were there, and you were integral to it, and you had, I think it was 6 years in that, I guess that chapter of your life. And I suppose this comes back to the title of the podcast. The guy who started 2 successful recruitment businesses, not 1, because round about the 6-year mark, Scott, you decided, for reasons that I hope you'll explain now, to essentially walk away from that successful chapter of your career. Now, most people, 6 years into a successful recruitment business, will probably just keep their head down and keep doing what they're doing. But you made a decision to change course. Why?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've spoken before as well, Pete. I mean, at that time, from a personal perspective, I went through a marriage separation. So I think those, life-changing events at the time, I had 3 kids. It's a significant change in your circumstances. So for me personally, that was a trigger point to say, I need to look at what I'm going to do, moving forward. I think also as well, being really open, I think we'd gone through I guess a situation at UNU where I'd got 2 new business partners. I think, they're great people, but what they wanted and what I wanted were 2 different things. And I think you've just got to be honest about that. I think in life and business, you've just got to be true to yourself. And where they wanted to take the business was different to where I wanted to take it. And I think I'd played my part in that journey. I'd worked so hard to get that business off the ground, from, sitting in an office where we were designing the brand and what that looked like, to 6 years later where, there's nearly 40 people and, arguably we were challenging Davidson's for the #1 spot. So, it was highly successful. It is highly successful. And those guys have gone on to bigger and better things. And I have as well. So I think, in life, you just got to be true to yourself. You've got to be true to what you want and know what you want. And I think fundamentally it comes down to being happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, we as human beings, we can't be all things to all men. I think the only reason I've managed to run a business for 16 years is because I'm on my own.
Yeah.
If I was with other people, it might have been shorter lived. But it's a good philosophy, right? And it's as long as you can look back and be proud of each chapter of your life, which you clearly are that kind of guy, then you've done everything correctly. So that brings us up to the to almost to the modern day with the introduction of Troocoo into your life. Now, just before we get into that, Scott, the names of your businesses, they've always struck me as pretty cool names. UNU and Troocoo. Where do those names come from?
Oh, listen, I think we can't take full credit for it because we work with branding agencies, right. and I think the branding agencies are the clever people and the creatives, and then we just make sure that we make the brand work. I think, you know, Troocoo is one of those names that just stands out. And I think, you know, in life, you've got to be different and you've got to stand out, because that has an immediate impact. So we were never going to be boring. We always wanted to create something that would be different and stand out. And that's what's happened. And then, you know, over time, the brand becomes, forms a life of its own. I think, you know, we'll have been going 4 years in February. And while not everyone knows the brand Troocoo, you know, it is out there now and it is getting more and more established in the Brisbane market, which is fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a cool name. I love the name. But anyway, sorry, I've taken you off on a tangent there. Let's just go back a step. So you decided that you'd done your dash with you and you, but decided to move on to the new enterprise, Troocoo. So what were the building blocks behind Troocoo?
Well, it was interesting, Pete. I mean, after, you know, my previous business, I took 12 months where I worked for Live Hire, which again is in the, you know, recruitment and talent space, but more from a technology perspective. So that was a great 12 months with Gigi and Mike, who were the founders of Live Hire. I had a brilliant 12 months there. They listed the business during that time. I watched the share price go through the roof, and you know, Jeff Morgan was the chairman and did a great job in getting that business, you know, really firing. I think for me though, what I realised was technology and people are two very different things. And I know it might sound obvious, but you know, I'm absolutely passionate about the people side. I really enjoyed working in a technology business, and clearly, you know, I know Greg Savage talks about it all the time. We're in that industry where it is, you know, the two sides. You know, you've got technology, you've got people. But for me personally, I want to be back on the people side. I absolutely love, you know, the recruitment and search space. I love dealing with people every single day. I love building businesses, and you know, I've now got the opportunity to do that again with, you know, 3 other great business partners who, you know, who are friends, and you know, we are so different. You know, if you met all 4 of us, you go, how does this work? But it does, and yeah, it's a great business, and I'm really happy that I'm in business with them.
And how did you know the other business partners? Did you know them from previous life, or did you just all come together?
Yeah, no, previous life. I mean, we'd you know, a couple of us had worked together. Andrew Pike, who he ran Talent International both in Brisbane and Sydney. We're really good friends. Our daughters are friends. So, you know, there was that ability that we knew each other. Of course, it was a risk. You know, when you've got 4 different people, as I said, and all coming at, you know, things from different perspectives, and not having worked together before, yeah, that's challenging, you know, and it took us probably 12-18 months to get our operating rhythm. But once you get that and you get it right, you know, it's very powerful. So I think, you know, the 4 of us would agree now that we're extremely happy, to the point where, you know, we've gone from probably a 3-year, 5-year planning cycle. We've got a 10-year plan now and a clear plan in terms of what we want Troocoo to look like in 2030. So I think you can only do that if you're aligned as a 4. And if you're not aligned, you have to call it and say, oh, we're not aligned. But the 4 of us are, you know, completely aligned. We know what we're doing. We know what we're building, and I've no doubt that we'll get to where we need to get to, which is, you know, that 10-year plan.
Wow. So you're planning that far ahead.
Yeah.
You'll be hitting the big 6-0 then, Scott. Hopefully you'll still be as wrinkle-free then as you are now.
I don't know whether you can see, but there is some grey coming through. That is another benefit of being ginger, that we don't go grey very easily. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is, you know, as I said to you, I turn 50 next year. I will be 60 in 2030 or 2031 to be precise. But that's exciting as well. I think, you know, when you're on a journey and you can see what we're going to build over that period of time, I want to be able to look back and go, you know, what an experience, what a journey that was. But I want to do it with people that want to be on that journey with me as well, which the guys are, which is exciting. It's
important, right? It's important to know that you can look back. You know, when you do hang up the compendium, you can look back and be proud of what you've done. And
and I think we're all going to live a lot longer. I mean, you know, the reality is, you know, if you read that book, The 100-Year Life, you know, I've still got a 6-year-old, and he's going to live well into his hundreds if he has a good run. So we're all going to work a lot longer than our parents did. You know, I think the retirement age of 65 will just keep going up, and I think it'll be 70, 75. You know, you look at what's going on in the US at the moment. You know, the two candidates for the presidency are both in the 70s. I mean, I think we're all going to work a lot longer. So for me, having a 10-year plan is not scary. And you know, I think we'll be younger at 60 than our parents were. So we're going to go a lot longer. And I think we've got a lot more energy and we'll make things work a lot longer.
It's, yeah, I agree. It's also quite scary, isn't it? You know, there's something very comforting about retiring at 60. No, I don't want to drag it out till the age of 70. But so tell me, so you guys, you all came together. It just worked. It clicked, and you know, in the same way that you had a plan to try and topple Davidson. What was the Troocoo plan? What gap were you trying to fill? What was the niche that you were trying to occupy in the Brisbane market?
Yeah, I think, having been through it before, I think the key thing is around building a culture. So it wasn't necessarily, we didn't have, right, this is what we want to build as a business and off we go. What we said was we want to build an exceptional culture that, you know, other people want to be part of. So we've worked extremely hard. I don't think, you know, as I said, the four of us coming together, it doesn't just click. That takes a lot of work. It's like any relationship. Relationships take work. So, but once you find that operating rhythm, you know, you're good to go. So I think the culture is critically important to any business. So our purpose really was quite simple. We wanted to create a safe, authentic, and really trustworthy environment where our people could thrive. And I think, you know, I talk a lot in our business about the psychology of safety. You know, if people feel safe and trusted and they feel like they've got a voice, they'll be highly successful. You know, they'll become creative, they'll be innovative. They feel like that you've got their back. And I think that's the critical component. So while we've been really clear to say we want to build a great business that offers executive search, recruitment and contracting, you can't do that unless you get the culture right. So we've worked really, really hard, I guess, at the next layer down. So if you look at our director group, we've gone out and specifically targeted those individuals and brought them into the business because they fit that mold and they fit that culture. You know, we have 4 values. We talk about them day in, day out. Every Monday morning when we have our Monday morning meeting, we lead around the values. The quarterly award, we have a Troocoo award. It's all based around our values. You can't get away from that. You know, we're values led. We live and breathe it. And as I say, you know, we've created a safe environment for our guys. They know that we've got their back. They know that we trust them. We're authentic in the conversations. If there's a tough conversation to be had, have it. Don't shy away from it, but move on. No politics, no gossip. Just have the conversation and move on. And I think that's the culture we've got.
I've been doing this job now for 16, 17 years, and I talk to business leaders about the culture of their businesses all the time. I've never heard the word safe or safety used in a conversation about culture.
I think it's critical. I mean, you think of children, you think of my kids, you know, fundamentally they want to feel safe. And as a parent, that's your job. You know, every day we try and keep our children safe. So in business, why is it any different? You know, we're a family, we come to work. If you make people feel safe, they'll work 10 times harder than if they're looking over the shoulder and they don't feel trusted. And you see that in productivity. I mean, you look at the results of Troocoo over the last 4 years and people say, you know, how have you achieved that in under 4 years? It's because we've created this environment. And even if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, the fundamentals are there: food, shelter, but then you get into the next phase up, which is safety. So it's really important. And I don't think businesses or leaders should underestimate how important that is.
Okay. Yeah. When you think about it, it's so logical. It's so logical. And I think about when I worked for people in recruitment land, I was driven by fear. I would do things or not do things because of fear of consequence or fear of of how it would impact me, and fear of getting it wrong, fear of having a hard conversation, which is the opposite of what you're saying.
Oh, listen, I mean, the guys, we have high performance expectations. So we're a high performing business. But we set realistic expectations, but we'll back our people and support them as well. And if someone's not achieving, we'll understand why that is and what we can do to help them. But I think, and obviously it'll be interesting when the podcast goes out, and I'm sure our guys will comment, but I think they'd all agree that, fundamentally they feel safe. Even through this pandemic, the one thing that we did as a four, we sat down and we said, right, what is going to be important to our guys? It's having certainty. We don't want to, that people don't like ambiguity. They want to know what's happening. So let's strip it down. Let's tell them what the break even is in the business. What do we need to do to break even as a business through a pandemic? Let's share all that with the guys so that when we're making decisions, we're communicating that really openly with our guys in terms of what's happening. We'll say to them, we're making decisions at the end of each month. And through that process, we didn't have to make anyone redundant. We approached it as a team. We said, listen, we'll go down to 4 days. We'll do that as a team. Everyone will work together through this. And we just communicated, over-communicated. People then felt safe in their environment. They felt job security. They knew that they didn't have to worry that, they had to make a mortgage payment or, we were talking them through that. But we said to them, the one thing we can't do is we can't promise that fundamentally that we're not going to have to make further cuts, but we're going to do everything in our power not to make people redundant, because we've worked so hard to get this team together. We don't want to let people go. And that's, really what we did. So, and that again comes back to that safety discussion.
Absolutely. And how have you gone through COVID? Do you think you're happy with the way the business has handled the pandemic? Do you think we're through the worst of it?
It's a good question. I put a post on LinkedIn this morning, which was to that point around, are we through the worst of it? I think as a business, to go back to your original question, I think we handled it as well as we could. And I'm really happy with the way that the four of us, led that process and the leadership team in terms of the way they handled that as well. And everyone in the business, I think they've handled themselves impeccably. In terms of, the market itself, clearly with the stimulus packages that are available through the government, that is going to take its toll when they start to reduce early in the new year. However, I think we've got to give leaders credit. This isn't going to be a surprise when JobKeeper finishes. We know it's going to finish. So the reality is people are budgeting accordingly, and they know that this is going to finish, at the end of March. So I think it is probably going to get a little bit tougher before it gets, completely back to normal. But interestingly enough, obviously you speak to the UK a lot, as I do. They're going back into lockdown. However, compared to the first wave, during the first wave, it's a bit like the GFC. People immediately start to think, right, we're going to have to make considerable cost savings and cuts. Whereas in this second lockdown, that isn't the mentality. The mentality is we've got to get on with life and business. And this is going to go on and on for a period of time. It's business as usual. Yes, we might be doing things remotely. Yes, we might not be in the office. But they're certainly not talking about, cutting costs or making redundancies. They're actually talking about getting on with business and getting on with life, which I think is really important. So I think we'll be no different in Australia, Pete. Yes, we're going to go through a little bit of pain early next year, but I think people will just get on with it until a vaccine's available.
Yeah. I think when I cast my memory back to that first lockdown, it was just the panic and the uncertainty. It was scary. You combine those things, and it was scary because we just didn't know when the light at the end of the tunnel was going to appear. But now we sort of know, and we've proven to ourselves we can get through it. And we've got 7 or 8 months under our belt, so can't go on forever.
Well, I think you're right. I remember, the day we had to send all our guys home, and we were stood there in the office, and you could see the fear in people's eyes. It's like, well, what does this mean? What does it mean to me and my family? What's going to happen? So that's where the communication comes in really quickly. It's, communicating every day. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. you know, you can see what's happening through the government. You know, the stimulus packages are coming. You know, jump on Zoom, jump on Teams. Let's check in regularly. How we're going from a mental health and wellbeing perspective, and really, you know, that engagement with people. At least they know what's going on. So that uncertainty, you're just trying to draw it back to go, there is a little bit of certainty here. We're just going to work with you as we go through this. So, but you're right. I mean, people now know what's happening. They know how to handle this. They're set up for remote working. And if we do go through a second wave, you know, we'll deal with it a lot better. I mean, you guys know this better than most. I mean, you guys have been unbelievable in terms of the way that you've just kept going down in Victoria. I mean, you're, you know, what you've achieved down there and the way that you've handled yourselves is just unbelievable. So you should be very proud.
Yeah, I think I've said it on LinkedIn a couple of times. I'm a little bit embarrassed and a little bit ashamed to admit that on occasion over the years, I haven't been super proud of our industry. You know, we are an industry that chases the dollar, and sometimes that hasn't got a nice side to it. But the way we have come together and just battled through this crappy time has been nothing short of inspirational. And you know, and recruiters have done themselves proud, but not only just by cracking on, but by putting an arm around each other and showing that actually we do care about more than just doing a few deals. You know, we do care about more than money.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of the thousands of people that are in our industry. I mean, you know, there's some amazing people, and you do become a counsellor through a downturn. You know, we saw it in the GFC, we've seen it again through coronavirus. We have a lot of supportive conversations with candidates. You know, there's millions of people still out of work. You know, you do everything you can to support people. You know, when people aren't working, it's one of the worst times of their life. We all need a purpose. We all need a reason to get out of bed in the morning. So I think that support we can give people is so important. And you see that, and people are extremely grateful. And you know, some of the best placements I've ever made are not where I've made them, but you've supported people through that journey, and someone else has placed them in a role, and you're delighted for them, and they come back and they thank you for the support that you've given them through that time. So, you know, I think you're right. This time, probably more than the GFC, we're in this together, and everyone's trying to support each other, which has been amazing.
Well, look, you've given us inadvertently given us some really good examples of how leadership has changed over the years, and I'm sure, you know, the way you lead today is very, very different to the way you led when you were in that first senior role at Hudson. But how have you changed as a person and as a business leader now in your Troocoo days compared to your Hudson and your U&U days?
Yeah, I mean, you grow as you get older. Of course you do. I mean, you know, you get more experience, you get wiser. I mean, you know, that's just the reality of getting older. I mean, you know, it is. I look at my 13-year-old now, and some of the things that she comes out with, I'm like, you know, you're kidding a kidder. You know, she'll try it on and chance her arm, but you know, there's not much that gets past us. The reality is, I think because I'm happier, and I guess this is what it comes down to, is that, you know, I enjoy every single day. I love coming into work every day. We've got an exceptional team. You know, I love working with my business partners. I love the guys at you know, across the whole business. So I really enjoy myself. I think as an individual, I'm a lot more resilient than I was previously. Having gone through quite a bit of adversity in my life, you know, I am pretty tough. I'm certainly not afraid to have a tough conversation, as our guys will say, but I do it always from a position of their perspective, and being fair and making sure that I've got their best interests at heart. So yeah, I think, you know, that maturity that comes with age is something that you can't get away from. I look at some of the mistakes I made early in my career, you know, where I was managing people, and probably leaned on the side of trying to support them instead of having the tough conversations. And then when I had to have a tough conversation, it was almost too late. Whereas now I'll just have the tough conversation early, and people, they like that. Everyone does. You know, you want to know where you stand in life, and you want to know what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and how you can improve. And I think that's how we lead. So I think overall, you know, I'm probably wiser, older, happier, and yeah, just a lot more resilient.
Wiser, older, and happier. I like it. I like it. So let's fast forward, Scott. It's March 2021. We found a virus. JobKeeper's gone, and we've all dealt with it.
We find a cure, you mean?
Sorry. Did I say virus? We found a virus. Yeah, no more viruses. We found a vaccine or a cure. One up.
Vaccine. Yeah.
JobKeepers has been dealt with, and we're looking to the future again. What does the future look like for Scott Horton? What does the future look like for Troocoo?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Troocoo. I mean, obviously they're intrinsically linked, but as I said, we've got a 10-year plan now, and while we're only based in Queensland at the moment, we are planning to expand into Sydney, Melbourne, hopefully Canberra and Adelaide at some point. We've made that decision that we want to be a national business and have a national footprint. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. It's going to be very challenging, and I think we've said that we'll look at it through either organic or non-organic growth. So we're working with a corporate advisory team at the moment, looking at potential acquisition targets down south. But I think the Melbourne market extremely well, Pete, as you know, Sydney as well. They're big markets. I think if you are going to build a national business, you need to have a footprint in those southern states. And while we've been very successful in Queensland, we know that we need to be in those key markets. So it's an exciting time. Our business is fully supportive and fully behind what we're doing. And I think, we've said if we can make an acquisition or, go with organic growth over the next 5 years, look at what we'll be, in 5 years' time, and then look at where we'll be in, 10 years' time as well. So I think it's a very exciting time. And I think for me personally, if I relate it back to me, I love a challenge. I love looking at things and saying, right, how can we make a difference there? What can we do? How can we build that business? And ultimately, I'm excited about, if I look at, Troocoo, where we came from, we were a startup business. There were 4 of us in an office getting the business off the ground, arguing about whether there should be a dot next to Troocoo or not, and what colour that dot should be, to now, we're a multi-million-dollar business. We're looking at expanding into state, and that's going to be challenging, but it's also uncharted waters. So, it's not like, all right, okay, this is going to be an easy journey. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard, but going from a startup to a scale up and then really scaling is exciting. And I think with the advisors we've got in place, the foundations we've built, and the business plan and I guess the strategy in place, I think we'll execute on that and be successful down south as well.
It'll keep you young, sir. Sounds like it sounds like a journey, and we'll do this. We'll have this chat again in a few years' time and see how you're going, but it'll keep you young. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your candor, and it's inspirational to hear how you've taken those periods of adversity in your life and channeled it into positive energy, and it's wonderful to hear that you're happy and enjoying Troocoo, and you've got a plan for the future.
No, thanks, Pete, and thanks for having me today. I've really enjoyed it. Always enjoy talking to you, but I really appreciate it.
And mate, give me a shout when you're ready to launch in Melbourne. We'll get cracking on that as well.
We'll be talking.
Good man. Thank you, Scott. All the best.
Thanks so much, Pete.
Bye.